Ned Stark stood at the edge of Winterfell's courtyard, the cold northern wind brushing against his face. A raven had arrived from King's Landing, summoning him to serve as Hand of the King. Catelyn's eyes were filled with worry, and Jon Snow watched quietly, sensing the tension in the air. Ned had always believed in honor and duty, but this request felt like a trap disguised as a call to loyalty. He had seen enough of the southern courts in his youth to understand the dangers that lay within the gilded halls of the Lannisters and the intrigues that festered like hidden poison. His sister had warned him, his old friend Robert Baratheon had pleaded, but Ned now paused. What if the honor he sought would instead cost the lives of those he loved? After long nights of thought and consultation with Catelyn, Ned made a choice that would alter the fate of Westeros. He decided not to go to King's Landing. Instead, he sent a letter to Robert, politely declining the position of Hand. He wrote of his love for Winterfell, of the duty he owed to his children, and of the dangers that awaited him in the south. The king was furious. Robert sent envoys to Winterfell, demanding Ned reconsider. But Ned remained firm. The northern lords murmured among themselves. Some feared the wrath of the king, while others secretly admired Ned's courage. This single choice would ripple across the Seven Kingdoms, shifting alliances and setting new paths for heroes and villains alike. Winterfell resumed its usual rhythm. Bran practiced his climbing. Arya ran through the woods with a newfound boldness. Sansa's lessons continued under the watchful eyes of her tutors, and Rickon stayed close to his mother, oblivious to the storm brewing beyond their walls. Ned found a strange peace in this decision. He would protect his family from the corrupt intrigues of King's Landing, and he would teach them to survive in a world where honor could be both a shield and a weakness. The North felt safer for now, but rumors of chaos in the South began to drift on the winds. The Lannisters, sensing the absence of Ned Stark in the capital, grew bolder. The tension between Robert and Cersei escalated, and whispers of secret children, plots, and betrayal circulated in King's Landing. Ned's refusal to leave Winterfell did not stop the wheels of fate. It merely shifted their path. Meanwhile, the wall remained a distant but looming presence. Jon Snow, watching his father choose duty to his family over duty to the king, felt conflicted. He still longed for the Night's Watch, for a purpose beyond the politics of men. But he also understood the weight of loyalty to home and family. Ned's choice inspired him, planting the seeds of leadership, patience, and wisdom that would define Jon's future. In the quiet of Winterfell's Godswood, Ned prayed for guidance, for wisdom to navigate the challenges ahead. Though he had avoided the South's dangerous politics, threats still lingered. The Lannisters would not forget his defiance, and shadows of war and intrigue were spreading. Yet, Ned Stark had chosen his path, and in his heart he knew it was the right one, not for honor or glory, but for the safety of those he loved most. In King's Landing, Ned's absence was immediately noticed. Robert Baratheon fumed at the empty seat meant for his hand. He had trusted Ned to manage the delicate balance of power in the capital, to hold the restless lords in check, and to uncover secrets hidden in the shadows. Without Ned there, the court became a storm of ambition, deceit, and danger. Cersei Lannister smiled quietly. The Queen had long feared Ned's sense of honor and his unyielding presence. With him staying in Winterfell, she felt freer to maneuver. Tywin Lannister, ever calculating, began consolidating his power subtly. Littlefinger whispered in dark corridors, plotting to take advantage of the king's temper and the Hand's refusal. Varys moved like a shadow, ensuring that the city's secrets flowed into his web, waiting for the moment to act. Robert, frustrated but unable to force Ned's hand, turned his attention elsewhere. He sought distractions in feasts and hunts, ignoring the political decay around him. This negligence gave the Lannisters and other ambitious players the space to tighten their grip. Rumors about the legitimacy of Cersei's children spread like wildfire, but with Ned absent, there was no one in the city with the integrity or courage to expose them. Meanwhile, in Winterfell, life continued with a fragile sense of normalcy. Bran climbed higher, dreaming of distant kingdoms, while Arya trained herself in swordplay in secret. Sansa, oblivious to the dangers brewing in the south, practiced diplomacy and etiquette under her tutor's watchful eyes. Jon Snow, inspired by his father's decision, wrestled with his own desires. He felt a stronger pull toward the Night's Watch, drawn to a place where honor and duty meant something outside the politics of kings and queens. Ned, however, could not ignore the news entirely. Ravens brought reports of tensions rising between Robert and Cersei. He knew that avoiding King's Landing might delay tragedy, but it would not prevent it. His heart ached for the chaos that was slowly consuming the South, but he also understood the risk of losing his family if he, personally, intervened. By staying in the North, he created a bulwark, a place of safety against the storm that was coming. In the shadows of Winterfell, whispers of change began. Petyr Baelish, frustrated by Ned's refusal to come south, started to weave new plots. He sought alliances in the Vale, spreading rumors that might someday undermine the Starks. Yet, without Ned in the south to challenge him, these manipulations had to develop slowly. Ned's choice created a vacuum that allowed corruption to fester, but also kept his children out of immediate danger. The North itself remained largely peaceful, but Ned could feel the tension building like a storm cloud on the horizon. He trained his sons in the ways of leadership and justice, teaching them that strength without wisdom was dangerous, and that honor sometimes required patience over action. He trained Arya in resilience and observation, preparing her to navigate a world that could be both cruel and treacherous. By refusing to go to King's Landing, Ned Stark had shifted the balance of power. The South was left vulnerable to manipulation and deceit, while the North grew stronger, more united, and prepared for the inevitable upheaval. It was a choice that would define the fate of the Starks, the Lannisters, and ultimately the fate of Westeros itself. Winterfell's walls seemed more alive than ever. Ned Stark's decision not to leave had given the North a renewed sense of purpose. The Bannermen came more frequently, seeking guidance, advice, and leadership from the Warden of the North. They respected Ned's courage, and his refusal to bend to the whims of a southern king strengthened their loyalty. Robb Stark, now more aware of his father's teachings, began taking on responsibilities in Winterfell. He learned to strategize, not just for battle, but for diplomacy, understanding the subtle ways in which alliances and promises could sway entire regions. Catelyn watched with pride, realizing that the North would survive and perhaps even flourish. Under Ned's guidance, Bran, though still young, displayed an unusual curiosity about the lands beyond the North. Ned encouraged him to explore the old histories, the stories of heroes and kings, and the lessons that could be learned from both success and failure. Knowledge, Ned reminded him, is a weapon as sharp as any sword. Arya, restless, as always, discovered her own form of rebellion and courage. With her father nearby, she began practicing stealth, learning to observe without being seen, to plan without others noticing. She understood, instinctively, that the world could be cruel, and that survival often required more than brute strength. In King's Landing, chaos continued unabated. The Lannisters grew bolder, exploiting Robert's inattentiveness. Queen Cersei tightened her hold over the city, while Jaime returned intermittently from the war front, his loyalty to family and love of power creating tension and opportunity. Without Ned Stark to counterbalance their moves, intrigue and deception thrived unchecked. Back in the north, Ned began forging alliances with the free folk beyond the wall. He recognized that threats were not limited to the south. The stories of White Walkers had always been dismissed as tales, but Ned knew the north was the first line of defense against whatever darkness might rise again. Jon Snow, inspired by his father's wisdom, trained harder than ever, preparing for a future that could demand both courage and cunning. Meanwhile, whispers of rebellion began in the Riverland. Lords, loyal to the Starks, started questioning their positions under a king distracted by pleasure and manipulated by cunning advisors. Ned Stark's presence in the north emboldened them. They sent envoys requesting his guidance, hoping that Stark's wisdom could stabilize their regions without plunging the realm into open war at Winterfell. Ned began planning for the long term. He built stronger fortifications, prepared stores of food, and trained the next generation of northern leaders. Every decision he made reflected a deep understanding of the cost of honor, the necessity of caution, and the power of foresight. By choosing his family and the North over personal ambition or loyalty to a reckless king, Ned created a sanctuary of stability in a kingdom teetering on the brink of chaos. Yet even as Winterfell prospered, shadows lurked beyond its walls. Petty rivalries, whispers of southern spies, and rumors of unnatural forces beyond the wall reminded Ned that no choice, however wise, could completely shield those he loved. But for now, he had secured the North, trained his children, and set the stage for a new era, one where wisdom and honor might finally prevail over deceit and ambition. The ripple effects of his choice continued to spread. The South spiraled into greater intrigue, while the North grew stronger, united, and vigilant. Ned Stark had refused King's Landing, but in doing so, he had rewritten the future of Westeros. Far to the south, King's Landing was spiraling into unrest. Robert Baratheon, frustrated by Ned's refusal, sought advice from unreliable courtiers. Without the Stark to temper his impulsive nature, the king's decisions became erratic. Laws were ignored, debts unpaid, and whispers of rebellion began to surface among the minor lords who had previously relied on Ned's judgment. Cersei Lannister capitalized on the chaos. She moved her children into positions of influence, ensuring that her family's power grew while the king's attention waned. Tywin Lannister, ever patient, manipulated court politics with careful precision. Every secret, every rumor, every petty feud became a tool to tighten his control. The absence of Ned Stark was felt keenly. He had been the only man in the capital whose sense of honor could counterbalance their schemes. Petier Leash, frustrated that Ned had not come south, adjusted his plans. He began targeting weaker lords, creating debts and dependencies, slowly weaving a web of influence that reached even Winterfell. Though the North remained safe for the moment, the reach of the South's schemers extended like a shadow across the map of Westeros. In Winter, life continued with a sense of purpose. Robb Stark matured quickly, learning not only the ways of war, but also the subtleties of leadership. He convened councils of bannermen, listened carefully to their concerns, and began to understand that ruling required both firmness and fairness. The young lord's confidence grew under Ned's guidance, and the seeds of a future capable leader were firmly planted. Arya, ever restless, discovered a hidden courage. She began exploring the surrounding lands more boldly, testing herself against challenges. The north provided naturally dense forests, icy rivers, and the occasional wild animal. Ned encouraged her bravery but warned of overconfidence, teaching her that patience and observation were as vital as strength. Bran, too, developed his mind in ways he had not imagined. His fascination with old stories, legends, and history deepened. Ned saw in him a child who could become a chronicler, a sage, perhaps even a protector of wisdom. The Godswood became his sanctuary, a place where Ned imparted lessons not only of honor but also of caution and discernment. Meanwhile, Jon Snow's desire to join the Night's Watch intensified. Ned, respecting his son's wishes, began preparing him for the harsh reality of life at the Wall. Jon trained rigorously, learning the ways of combat, survival, and leadership. Ned's mentorship ensured that Jon would not only survive the challenges ahead but also grow into a man capable of making the hard choices that honor sometimes demanded. Back in King's Landing, the absence of Ned's moral compass created a void that corruption and ambition thrived in. Political assassinations became whispered threats rather than distant fears. Every day, the city edged closer to chaos, and yet Ned's family in the north remained untouched by the immediate dangers. The contrast between the north and south could not have been more pronounced. One ruled by honor and unity, the other by ambition and manipulation. Ned Stark, standing atop Winterfell's walls, understood the significance of his decision. By refusing to go to King's Landing, he had delayed tragedy in the north, strengthened his family, and allowed the north to grow stronger. But he also knew the storm was still brewing. The south's scheming could reach the north eventually, and the shadows of deceit and ambition were never easily kept at bay. For now, though Winterfell was a fortress of stability, honor, and preparation, Ned had bought his family time, and in the world of Westeros, time was a weapon as deadly as any sword. Winterfell thrived under Ned Stark's steady hand. The bannermen trusted his guidance, and neighboring lords began to respect the strength and unity of the North. News of his refusal to serve as hand spread, turning some into admirers and others into wary opponents. Ned had created not just a safe home, but a power base that could shape the future of Westeros. Robb Stark grew more confident as he learned the delicate balance of leadership. He held councils with the Northern Lords, listening carefully to disputes, and mediating conflicts with wisdom beyond his years. Ned encouraged him to see both the immediate needs of the North and the larger strategic picture. A good leader knows when to act and when to wait, Ned reminded him. Patience is sometimes the sharpest weapon. Arya continued her secret training. She learned to move quietly, to read people, and to trust her instincts. Her restlessness transformed into a quiet strength, one that Ned recognized would serve her well in the dangerous world beyond Winterfell. He encouraged her independence, but reminded her always to value family, loyalty, and honor. Jon Snow's departure for the Night's Watch was now imminent. Ned had trained him in swordsmanship, survival skills, and the difficult lessons of leadership. Jon left Winterfell with a sense of purpose, carrying with him his father's wisdom and the northern values of honor, courage, and loyalty. The Wall awaited, and Jon's path would soon intertwine with events far beyond the north, beyond Winterfell. Ned began reaching out to other northern and border lords. He sent envoys to the Vale, to the Riverlands, and even to the free folk beyond the wall. Though cautious, he sought alliances that could provide security for the north against southern threats. His wisdom and reputation made these efforts surprisingly effective. Northern lords rallied to him, while southern spies found it difficult to penetrate the unity he fostered. Meanwhile, the South's chaos intensified. King Robert's attention remained fickle, distracted by hunts and feasts. The Lannisters exploited every opening. Cersei maneuvered to solidify her family's influence, while Tywin's calculated moves made him an invisible yet undeniable force. Without Ned Stark to oppose them, the southern power struggle grew more dangerous, and whispers of rebellion, assassination, and treachery became everyday concerns for those who remained in King's Landing. Pettier Baelish's schemes, slowed only by Ned's absence, continued quietly. He reached out to lords and small folk alike, seeking opportunities to gain power in both the north and the south. His machinations promised trouble in the future, but Ned's vigilance made it difficult for him to make a decisive impact for the time being. The wall, however, loomed as a distant threat. Reports of unusual activity shadows beyond the wall. Strange sightings among the free folk reached Ned's ears. While many dismissed such stories as legend, Ned's cautious nature demanded attention. He instructed Jon and trusted northern allies to keep watch, preparing for dangers that most of Westeros would not even believe existed. At Winterfell, peace reigned, but it was a peace built on preparation, vigilance, and the foresight of a Stark, who understood the cost of honor and duty. By refusing King's Landing, Ned had protected his family, strengthened the North, and set the stage for the coming struggle between honor, ambition, and survival. Yet even in this northern sanctuary, Ned could sense the distant ripples of chaos spreading from the south. The storm was coming, and one day its consequences would reach Winterfell. But for now, the Stark family stood united, vigilant, and prepared, their bonds stronger than ever. Winterfell had never felt more alive. The northern lords convened regularly, sharing news, grievances, and intelligence from the distant corners of the kingdom. Ned Stark's presence was a stabilizing force, and the loyalty he inspired created an atmosphere of unity rarely seen in Westeros. The North was not just safe, it was strong, prepared, and aware of threats both near and far. Robb Stark continued his rapid growth into a leader. He began leading small hunts and patrols, learning the intricacies of strategy, negotiation, and diplomacy. Ned watched proudly as his son matured, recognizing the seeds of a future capable of defending the North. Strength is meaningless without wisdom, Ned reminded him, and wisdom without courage is useless. Arya's training became more disciplined. She practiced her agility, her observation skills, and her ability to think quickly under pressure. Her father encouraged her to embrace her spirit, teaching her that survival often required cunning as much as bravery. Never underestimate the value of being underestimated, Ned said, seeing her grow sharper with each day. Jon Snow's departure for the Night's Watch drew closer. Ned and Jon spent long hours together, discussing the realities beyond Winterfell. Ned prepared him not just for the cold, the hardships, or the wall itself, but for the moral dilemmas he would face. "The world will test your honor, Jon," Ned warned, "and sometimes the hardest choice is the right one. Remember who you are and where you come from." Meanwhile, in King's Landing, tension escalated. Without Ned to temper Robert's impulsive nature, disputes among the lords turned into open arguments. Cersei's influence grew stronger by the day, and Tywin Lannister's subtle manipulations made him a silent kingmaker. Rumors of illegitimate heirs and secret deals stirred unrest among the minor houses. Each day, the city inched closer to chaos, yet without Ned. There was no counterbalance, no voice of reason or honor to challenge their schemes. Peter Baelish continued to weave his web. He saw the absence of Ned as both a challenge and an opportunity. In the north, he quietly sought to influence lesser lords, planting seeds of discontent that could one day weaken the Stark's unity. But Ned's foresight and vigilance kept him several steps ahead, ensuring that Baelish's schemes were slow to bear fruit. The free folk beyond the wall became a growing concern. Strange sightings and reports of unnatural activity arrived at Winterfell, and Ned knew that the North could not remain isolated forever. He instructed trusted allies to watch carefully and prepare for the coming threats, even as the southern intrigues continued. The world was changing, and only those who planned ahead could survive its chaos. Winterfell itself became a hub of preparation. Fortifications were reinforced, supply lines strengthened, and training intensified. The Starks led by example, showing their people that courage, discipline, and unity were as important as swords and shields. The northern banners flew proudly, signaling strength to any who might underestimate them. Yet, even in this northern sanctuary, Ned felt the distant shadows of the South's scheming. He knew that sooner or later the consequences of southern chaos would reach his family, but for now he had delayed tragedy, strengthened the North, and provided his children with the wisdom and skills to face the world beyond Winterfell's walls. The storm of Westeros was gathering, but the North, under Ned Stark's guidance, was ready. The lessons of honor, patience, and vigilance had been instilled in the next generation, ensuring that when the inevitable confrontation came, the Starks would be prepared to face it together. The absence of Ned Stark in King's Landing began to have far-reaching effects. The Lannisters grew bolder, exploiting the lack of a northern hand to oppose them. Cersei manipulated Robert's indulgences, consolidating her influence, while Tywin carefully extended his network of loyal allies. The city's court became a place of intrigue and whispers, with little opposition to slow their rise. Back in Winterfell, Ned focused on preparing his family and his lands. Robb had become a capable leader, adept at balancing diplomacy with firmness. His father tested him with scenarios, small disputes, threats from rival lords, and ethical dilemmas, teaching him the importance of judgment and responsibility. Robb began understanding that leadership required foresight and restraint, lessons that would one day make him a formidable lord. Arya continued her unconventional training. With Ned's cautious guidance, she learnt to observe, anticipate, and adapt to danger. Her cunning grew alongside her courage, and she became more self-reliant, understanding that her wits could protect her in ways a sword sometimes could not. Bran, fascinated by the histories and mysteries of Westeros, delved deeper into learning the secrets of the North, the Wall, and even the old legends whispered in the Godswood. Jon Snow's departure for the Night's Watch marked a turning point. Ned watched his son leave with pride and concern, knowing Jon would face challenges that required both physical skill and moral strength. Jon carried with him the lessons of honor, patience, and vigilance that Ned had instilled, preparing him for the unknown dangers beyond the wall. In King's Landing, Robert's negligence deepened the city's instability. The king, distracted by indulgence, allowed the Lannisters and other ambitious figures to consolidate power. Rumors of illegitimate heirs, bribery, and plots became commonplace. Without Ned Stark, the Southern Court lacked a moral compass, and The consequences of unchecked ambition began to manifest in growing unrest and tension among the minor houses. Pettier Baelish, sensing opportunity, accelerated his schemes. His influence reached deeper into both the north and the south, exploiting minor disputes and planting seeds of distrust. Yet Ned's foresight and vigilance kept the north largely insulated, preventing Baelish from taking full advantage. The Starks' unity and preparation ensured that the north remained a fortress against manipulation, even as threats multiplied beyond their borders. The wall and the free folk beyond it remained a looming concern. Strange signs and unusual occurrences reminded Ned that dangers were not limited to southern politics. He reinforced the northern defenses and prepared allies to respond swiftly if the threat from the north ever escalated. Every measure taken reflected a balance of caution and courage, ensuring that Winterfell could withstand both political and supernatural challenges. Despite the growing turmoil in the south, Winterfell became a model of stability, discipline, and preparedness. Ned's choice not to go to King's Landing allowed his family to grow strong, his bannermen to trust him deeply, and the north to prepare for the storms that would inevitably reach their lands. The absence of southern interference allowed Winterfell to flourish, shaping the next generation of Starks into leaders capable of facing whatever Westeros might throw at them. Ned Stark's decision had shifted the balance of power. The South was mired in corruption and intrigue, while the North grew stronger, united, and vigilant. Though the shadows of the South loomed, Winterfell had become a beacon of honor, wisdom, and preparedness, a place where the consequences of choice had forged resilience and strength. Winterfell awoke to a crisp northern morning, the sun casting its pale light over the snow-dusted battlements. Ned Stark stood silently atop the walls, watching his children train, his bannermen prepare, and the north hum with quiet strength. His decision to remain home had created a sanctuary, a bastion against the chaos consuming the south. Robb Stark, now growing into a confident leader, practiced strategies with seasoned northern warriors. Each movement, each decision was guided by the lessons Ned had instilled: balance, foresight, and responsibility. Robb's presence inspired the bannermen, reinforcing the unity of the North and creating a sense of purpose that had been absent in generations past. Arya, swift and observant, moved through the training yard like a shadow. She had learned to anticipate danger and rely on both cunning and courage. Ned watched her with a mixture of pride and caution, knowing that the lessons she carried would one day define her survival in a world rife with deceit. Bran delved deeper into the histories of Westeros, the tales of ancient kings, and the legends of heroes. Ned encouraged his curiosity, realizing that knowledge was as vital as strength or honor. Bran's fascination with the past, combined with Ned's guidance, could shape him into a protector not only of Winterfell, but of the stories and wisdom of the North. Jon Snow, far beyond the Wall, sent ravens reporting strange happenings and challenges. Ned read each letter with concern, yet with confidence that his son's preparation and understanding of honor would guide him through whatever lay ahead. Jon carried the values of the North into a dangerous and uncertain world, a testament to Ned's foresight in nurturing both strength and wisdom. In King's Landing, unrest continued. The absence of Ned Stark's moral compass left the court vulnerable to manipulation, ambition, and chaos. Cersei and Tywin's influence grew unchecked. Pettier Baelish's schemes silently spread, and Robert Baratheon remained distracted by pleasures. The South descended further into intrigue, with no steady hand to counterbalance the rising tension. Yet Winterfell remained untouched. Ned's choice had allowed his family to flourish, his bannermen to unite, and the North to grow stronger. The lessons of honor, patience, and vigilance had taken root, creating a legacy that extended beyond immediate survival. Winterfell had become not only a home, but a singular place where foresight and courage could withstand the storms of a fractured kingdom. Ned Stark understood the cost of his decision. He had delayed tragedy, strengthened his family, and created a northern power capable of standing against both southern ambition and unseen threats beyond the wall. His children were prepared, his bannermen loyal, and the North vigilant. Though shadows loomed on the horizon, the foundations of resilience had been laid. As the sun rose higher, Ned felt a quiet sense of accomplishment. The North was safe, united, and ready. By choosing family, honor, and foresight over blind duty, to a reckless king, he had rewritten the destiny of Westeros in subtle but profound ways. A new dawn had arrived, not one without challenges, but one where the North, under the Starks, stood strong, unbroken, and vigilant. And so Winterfell endured, a fortress of honor, wisdom, and resilience, testament to the power of choice and the enduring strength of the Stark family.